Jack Harmon stared out the viewport as the diplomatic shuttle approached the massive space station. The Galactic Conclave headquarters hung in orbit around a gas giant, its spiral arms extending like a metal flower blooming in space. Jack's mouth felt dry. He never wanted this job. 10 minutes until docking, the pilot announced. "Are you ready, Dr. Harmon?" Jack nodded, though he felt anything but ready. 6 months ago, he had been studying predator behavior in Yellowstone National Park. Now he represented all of humanity at the first official meeting with the Galactic Conclave, an alliance of 23 spacefaring species. Earth needed all eyes. 3 different alien scout ships had been spotted at the edges of the solar system in the past year. Humanity needed protection, and the Conclave offered it for members only. Jack adjusted his simple blue uniform. He was chosen not for diplomatic skills, but for his expertise in understanding predator-prey relationships. The early reports suggested many Conclave species had evolved from apex predators. Earth's committee hoped Jack could help humans navigate these potentially dangerous interactions. "Remember," Captain Liz Warren said from the seat beside him, "show no fear. These species respect strength above all else." Jack almost laughed. At 5'10" with a runner's build, he hardly presented an imposing figure. But he knew predators well enough to understand that confidence mattered more than size. The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. Jack took a deep breath and stood. Earth was counting on him. The reception area buzzed with activity. Beings of all shapes moved with purpose through the wide hall. Some walked on 4 legs, others slithered, and a few even floated above the ground. The air smelled of metal and strange spices. A group of towering reptilian creatures approached. They stood at least 7 feet tall, with scaled skin in shades of green and bronze. Sharp teeth gleamed when they spoke. Jack recognized them immediately as Vexians, the dominant species of the Conclave and its founding members. "Welcome, Earth representative," the largest one said through a translator device on his chest. "I am Ambassador Vrexkar." Jack stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Thank you, Ambassador." "I am Dr. Jack Harmon of Earth." The Vrexians exchanged glances. One of them made a sound like stones grinding together. Jack recognized it as laughter. "This is their chosen diplomat?" A younger Vrexian whispered in their language, not realizing Jack's translator could pick it up. So small and soft. No claws, no fangs. Jack kept his face neutral despite the insult. He had studied the Vrexians extensively during the journey. They valued physical power and saw other species through the lens of predator versus prey. "Ambassador." Vrexkar led Jack through a series of hallways into a vast chamber. Representatives from various worlds sat in tiered seating around a central platform. Many turned to stare as Jack entered. He heard whispers and clicks and hums, all discussing the new arrival. "The Council will now recognize Earth's petition for membership," a booming voice announced. Jack stepped onto the platform, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. He delivered his prepared speech about Earth's desire for peaceful relations and mutual growth. When he finished, Ambassador Vrexkar stepped forward again. "The petition is noted. However, as is Conclave tradition, new species must demonstrate their worth before full acceptance." Jack had been warned this might happen. "What form will this demonstration take?" The ambassador's mouth stretched into what might have been a smile, though it looked more like a threat display to Jack. "You will spend 1 lunar cycle on Vexus, Prime, our homeworld," Vrexkar announced. "If you survive, Earth will be welcomed into the Conclave with full member status." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Jack's translator picked up fragments. "Impossible. Death sentence. Soft prey. And if I refuse?" Jack asked, knowing the answer. "Then Earth remains unprotected," Vrexkar said simply. "The choice is yours, human." Captain Warren touched Jack's arm. "We need to discuss this," she whispered. Jack shook his head. "No need. I accept the challenge." More grinding laughter from the Vrexian delegation. "The human accepts," Vrexcar announced, sounding almost delighted. "Preparations will be made immediately." Later, in their assigned quarters, Captain Warren paced angrily. "This is a setup. They're sending you to die, Jack." "Probably," Jack agreed as he scrolled through data on Vexus Prime on his tablet. The planet looked like Earth's most dangerous environments combined into one deadly package. Higher gravity, extreme temperature, shifts and wildlife that would make Earth's most dangerous predators look like house pets. "Then why accept?" Jack looked up from his reading. "Because they expect me to say no. They want to label us as cowards, as prey. That gives other predatory species an excuse to target Earth. So instead you'll die on their planet. That helps." "U.S. how?" Warren demanded. Jack smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. "Who said anything about dying? I've spent my life studying predators, Liz. I know how they think." He pulled up an image of a particularly nasty-looking creature native to Vexus Prime. The Vrexians evolved alongside these beasts. They respect them because they had to learn to survive them. And that helps you how? It means there are survival strategies that work. I just need to figure them out. Jack set down his tablet. Plus, they're underestimating me. They see me as weak because I'm smaller and lack natural weapons. That's an advantage. Warren didn't look convinced. "The committee can override your decision. We can find another way into the conclave." Jack shook his head. "There is no other way, not in time." He stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "I leave tomorrow. I'll have basic supplies and a communication device for emergencies." "You realize calling for help means automatic failure?" "I won't be calling for help," Jack said quietly. The next morning, Jack boarded a Vrexian transport ship bound for Vexus Prime. Ambassador Vrexcar himself came to see him off, along with several other Vrexians who seemed eager to witness the human's departure. "I must admire your courage, if not your wisdom," Vrexcar said. "Few non-Vrexians have set foot on our world. None have survived a full cycle." "There's a first time for everything," Jack replied calmly as the transport pulled. Away from the station, Jack watched the Vrexians through the viewport. They were already celebrating their victory. They had no idea that Jack had spent the night studying not just Vexus Prime's predators, but Vrexian psychology. The real challenge wouldn't be surviving the planet. It would be changing how the Vrexians saw humans. And for that, Jack had a plan. The transport entered warp, carrying Jack toward the deadly world where humanity's future would be decided. The Vrexian transport ship landed with a heavy thud on the surface of Vexus Prime. Jack felt the increased gravity immediately, like a weight pressing down on his shoulders and chest. Each breath required more effort in the thinner atmosphere. "We land here," the Vrexian pilot said, opening the ship's door. Hot, dry air rushed in, carrying strange smells that Jack's brain couldn't quite process. "Monitoring station is 2 miles that way." The pilot pointed to a small structure on a hill. "Supply pack has water filter, basic food, emergency beacon. Using beacon ends challenge." Jack nodded and took the heavy pack. "Any advice?" he asked. The pilot showed his teeth in what was definitely not a smile. "Try not to die too quickly. Vrexcar has bet you won't last 3 days." With that encouragement, Jack stepped onto the alien soil. The transport's door closed behind him, and the ship lifted off, leaving him alone on the hostile world. The red sun hung low in the sky. From his briefing, Jack knew he had about 2 hours of daylight left. He needed to reach the monitoring station before dark. Predators would be most active during the transition from day to night. Jack adjusted the pack and began walking. Each step required conscious effort in the higher gravity. By the time he reached the station, sweat soaked his clothes despite the environmental controls in his suit. The monitoring station was a simple structure with metal walls. Inside, he found a cot, a water recycler, and a small food preparation unit. One wall held screens showing feeds from cameras placed throughout the surrounding area. The Vrexians would be watching his every move. Jack allowed himself a small smile. At the cameras, "Hello to my audience," he said aloud. "I hope you enjoy the show." He spent the remaining daylight hours securing the station and studying the landscape through the monitors. The terrain was rocky, with patches of strange purple vegetation. Large flying creatures circled in the distance. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped rapidly. The station's heating system activated automatically, but Jack knew he couldn't stay inside forever. The challenge required survival, not hiding. Jack slept lightly that first night, waking to unfamiliar sounds, roars, and hisses that made the hairs on his neck stand up. But nothing approached the station. When morning came, Jack began his work. He spent the day exploring the immediate area, collecting samples of plants and setting up markers to help him navigate. The gravity made every task exhausting, but he pushed through the discomfort. On the screens in the station, he could see Vrexians watching his activities, looking bored or disappointed. They had expected him to cower in fear or make deadly mistakes. Right away. By the third day, Jack had mapped a half-mile radius around the station and identified several water sources. He'd also spotted various creatures from a safe distance, noting their behaviors and patterns. That afternoon, he encountered his first real danger. Jack was examining a cluster of what looked like fruit when he sensed movement behind him. He turned slowly to see a large six-limbed creature with quill-like spines on its back. The animal resembled a mix between a mountain lion and a porcupine, but much larger. The briefing materials had called this a colonor, a predator that could tear through young Vrexians. The colonor crouched, ready to pounce. Jack knew running would trigger an immediate chase. Instead, he straightened his posture, making himself appear larger, and maintained eye contact with the beast. "I see you," Jack said calmly, "and I'm not your prey today." The colonor growled, circling Jack slowly. Jack mirrored its movements, never turning his back. He reached slowly into his pocket and pulled out a small device that emitted a high-pitched sound when activated, something he had prepared based on his studies of Earth predators. When the colonor tensed to leap, Jack activated the device. The sound wasn't painful, but it was startling and unfamiliar. The beast hesitated, confused by this prey that didn't act like prey and made strange noises. Jack used the moment to back away, still facing the creature, still maintaining his confident posture. After a tense minute, the colonor sniffed the air, seemed to lose interest, and moved away to find easier prey. Once it was gone, Jack let out a long breath and leaned against a rock. His heart raced, but he had passed the first test. Back at the monitoring station, the screens showed a group of Vrexians watching the recorded encounter. Their expressions were hard to read, but they no longer looked bored. "The human understands predators," one of them said. "It did not run or show fear." "Ambassador." Vrexkar leaned forward, studying the footage. "A lucky encounter. The real challenges await." Over the next week, Jack established a routine. Mornings for gathering and exploration, afternoons for improving his camp, evenings for analysis and rest. He fashioned crude tools from materials. He found and created a second shelter in a cave as a backup. The Vrexians watched with growing interest. The human had survived longer than expected and showed surprising adaptability. Some even began to root for him, impressed by his methodical approach. On the 10th day, a storm hit. Violent winds tore at Jack's camp, and lightning struck dangerously close to the station. The temperature plummeted, and icy rain fell in sheets. Jack retreated to his cave shelter, bringing essential supplies. The cave provided protection from the wind and rain, but the cold was penetrating. He built a small fire using the emergency kit and local plant material he had found to burn Dot as he huddled by the fire. A sound echoed through the cave, a deep, rumbling growl that made his blood freeze. Jack slowly turned toward the deeper part of the cave system. Two glowing yellow eyes reflected the firelight from the darkness. Something large was moving toward him. Something much bigger than the Cowan AR Dot in the Vrexion Monitoring Center. Alarms sounded. Ambassador Vrexcar rushed to the main screen as operators zoomed in on Jack's cave. "Is that what I think it is?" a junior officer asked, voice filled with concern. Vrexcar nodded grimly. "A Krovax. It must have taken shelter in the cave system before the human arrived." The room fell silent. No one had told Jack about the Krovax, the apex predators of Vexus Prime that even Vrexian warriors approached with extreme caution. 12 feet tall with armored hide that could deflect most weapons. They were living tanks with the speed of a cheetah and jaws strong enough to crush rock. "The human is dead," someone whispered. "No one survives a Krovax encounter unprepared." Ambassador Vrexcar watched the screen intently as the massive shape emerged from the shadows of the cave, approaching the now standing human. "Maybe," he said quietly, "but this human has surprised us before." In the cave, Jack stood perfectly still as the enormous reptilian creature came into the light. Its scales gleamed like burnished bronze, and its teeth were longer than Jack's fingers. It towered over him, powerful and ancient. Jack knew immediately this meeting would determine not just his fate, but humanity's place among the stars. Jack stood motionless as the massive Krovax moved into the firelight. His mind raced through everything he knew about predators, but nothing in his experience compared to this creature. Its yellow eyes fixed on him with an intelligence that felt ancient and calculating. The cave offered no escape. The storm outside raged with increasing fury, and the Krovax blocked the path deeper into the cave system. Jack knew that running would trigger the predator's chase instinct. Fighting was not an option against something 5 times his size with natural armor. He made a decision based on instinct and years of studying apex predators. Jack slowly lowered his body, crouching down to make himself appear smaller and less threatening. He kept his eyes lowered, not meeting the Krovax's gaze directly, a sign of respect rather than challenge. In the monitoring center, the Vrexians watched in stunned silence. "What is the human doing?" a junior officer asked. "It should, at least." "Try to run." Ambassador Vrexcar leaned forward, fascinated. "It's submitting, showing it is not a threat or competition." "But Krovax don't care about submission," another Vrexian argued. "They kill anything in their territory." "Watch," Vrexcar said softly. The Krovax approached Jack with deliberate steps that shook the cave floor. Its head, larger than Jack's entire torso, lowered to his level. Hot breath washed over Jack as the creature sniffed him, its nostrils flaring. Jack remained still, controlling his breathing despite his pounding heart. Then, to his surprise, the Krovax made a low rumbling sound, not the aggressive growl he had heard earlier, but something softer, almost curious. Thing on pure instinct, Jack slowly raised his hand, palm outward, keeping his movements smooth and non-threatening. The Krovax stared at the offered hand, then did something that caused gasps among the watching Vrexians. It pressed its armored snout against Jack's palm. "Impossible," whispered a Vrexian scientist, checking her instruments. "The Krovax is displaying non-aggressive greeting behavior. It's treating the human as as a non-threat," Ambassador Vrexcar finished, his voice filled with disbelief. The scientist shook her head. "No, sir. It's more than that." The Krovax is treating the human as it would treat another Krovax, a familiar one. In the cave, Jack could hardly believe what was happening. The massive predator had not only spared him, but seemed to be investigating him with something like recognition. The Krovax pulled back slightly, tilting its head as if confused by Jack's scent or appearance. Jack remembered reading that many predators communicated through sounds. He cleared his throat and tried to imitate the rumbling sound the Krovax had made. His attempt was poor, but the effect was immediate. The Krovax's eyes widened, and it made the sound again, this time louder and with a different pitch. Then it moved past Jack to the opposite side of the fire and settled down, its enormous body curled around the cave wall. It watched Jack, but made no move to attack. Jack slowly sat back down by the fire, keeping the flames between him and the creature. For reasons he couldn't understand, the apex predator of this world had decided he wasn't prey. The storm continued through the night. Jack slept in short bursts, always aware of the Krovax across the fire. Each time he woke, the creature was either sleeping or calmly watching him. By morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight filtered into the cave entrance. Jack packed his supplies, preparing to return to the monitoring station. The Krovax rose and stretched, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its armored hide. Jack bowed slightly to the creature before turning to leave. He had taken only a few steps when he realized the Krovax was following him. In the monitoring center, chaos erupted. It's following him. The Krovax is following the human. Ambassador Vrexkar barked orders. Send a team immediately. I want to see this myself. Jack walked slowly back to the station, aware of the massive predator padding along behind him like an oversized guard dog. At the edge of the clearing where the station stood, the Krovax stopped. It seemed unwilling to approach the metal structure. Jack turned to face the creature. Thank you, he said simply. The Krovax made its rumbling sound again, then retreated to the edge of the nearby forest, where it settled down, watching. When Jack entered the station, the communication system activated immediately. Ambassador Vrexkar's face appeared on the screen. Human, the ambassador said, dropping the usual diplomatic formalities. Explain what just happened. Jack shrugged. I'm not entirely sure myself. The Krovax could have killed me, but it didn't. It seemed curious about me. Krovax are solitary apex predators, Vrexkar said. They do not spare prey, and they certainly do not follow creatures outside their species. Yet this one treats you like what? Jack asked when the ambassador trailed off. Like kin, Vrexkar finished. I am coming to your location with the science team. Do not approach the Krovax again until we arrive. Within hours, a Vrexian shuttle landed near the station. Ambassador Vrexkar emerged with 5 other Vrexians carrying scientific equipment. They set up instruments around the perimeter of the clearing, all while casting nervous glances at the Krovax that remained at the forest edge. A female Vrexian approached Jack with a handheld scanner. I am Chief Scientist Zexira, she introduced herself. May I scan you? Jack nodded. The scientist ran her device over his body, focusing particularly on his neck and wrists. She checked the readings, then ran the scan again, as if not believing the results. Ambassador, she called, you need to see this. Vrexkar came over, and the scientist showed him the scanner display. The ambassador's eyes widened, and he looked at Jack with new interest. What is it? Jack asked. You produce a pheromone signature. Zexira explained, one that is remarkably similar to ancestral Krovax alphas. Our instruments detected it, but we didn't believe the readings until now. Jack frowned. How is that possible? I'm from another planet entirely. That, the ambassador said, is what we intend to find out. He gestured toward the Krovax, which had risen to its feet and was watching the group intently. It recognizes Something in you, something that triggers a reaction beyond normal predator-prey dynamics. Can you communicate with it? Jack asked. Find out why it's behaving this way? Zexira shook her head. Krovax do not communicate with Phyrexians beyond threat displays. Our species evolved alongside them as competitors, not allies. But you. She looked at Jack with newfound respect. You might be able to learn more. How? It trusts you, Ambassador Vrexkar said. Or at least it recognizes you as something familiar. With your permission, we would like to observe your interactions with it over the coming days. Jack looked from the Vrexians to the waiting Krovax. The creature that should have killed him had instead formed some kind of bond with him. If he could understand why, it might change how the Vrexians and the entire galactic conclave viewed humans. I'll do it, Jack said, but on one condition. Name it, Vrexkar replied. Tell me everything you know about Krovax. Bare history, biology, behavior, everything. If I'm going to understand this connection, I need all the information you have. The ambassador nodded. Agreed. We begin tomorrow. That night, as Jack reviewed the Vrexian data on Krovax, he glanced out the window. Of the station, the massive predator remained at the forest edge, its eyes reflecting the station's lights like twin moons in the darkness. Something had changed on Vexus Prime. The weak human had not only survived, but had somehow formed a bond with the planet's most feared predator. And now, even the mighty Vrexians were looking at him differently, with curiosity, confusion, and the first glimmers of respect. Morning came with the red sun of Vexus Prime, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jack woke early, his body still adjusting to the planet's 27-hour day. Outside the station window, the Krovax remained where it had settled. The night before, its massive body curled at the forest edge. A knock on the station door announced the arrival of the Vrexian science team. Chief Scientist Zexira entered first, carrying several devices. The ambassador will join us later, she explained. We wish to begin tests immediately. Jack nodded. What's the plan? First, we will record your pheromone signature in detail, Zexira said. Then we hope to observe your interaction with the Krovax under controlled conditions. The next few hours were filled with scans and samples. The Vrexians collected sweat, skin cells, and even asked Jack to wear a special suit that captured his body's emissions. Throughout the process, the Krovax watched from a distance, occasionally making low rumbling sounds when Jack appeared in the doorway by midday. Sashira had compiled enough data to share her preliminary findings. She displayed a holographic model, showing complex molecular structures. This, she pointed to a cluster of molecules, is your unique chemical signature. And this, she pulled up another model beside it, is the signature of an Alpha Krovax from our historical records. Even to Jack's untrained eye, the similarities were striking. Certain structures were almost identical. How is this possible? He asked. Humans and Krovax evolved on different planets, light years apart. Zexira's expression was hard to read, but Jack thought she looked excited. That is the fascinating question. There are several theories we must explore. One possibility is panspermia, the idea that life spreads throughout the galaxy via meteorites or other space debris. Perhaps Earth and Vexus Prime were seeded from the same source billions of years ago. Ambassador Vrexkar arrived as she was explaining. There is another possibility, he said, one that our historians have long debated. The Ancient Ones. Jack looked between them. The Ancient Ones? A spacefaring civilization believed to have existed billions of years ago, Zexira explained. According to legend, they seeded many worlds with life forms engineered to eventually evolve into intelligent species. Some of our oldest ruins contain references to them. You think these ancients might have created both humans and Krovax? Jack asked. Or at least shared genetic material between worlds, the ambassador said. It would explain the connection you share with the Krovax, despite evolving on different planets. Jack looked out at the waiting predator. So what now? Now, Rexkar said, we test the extent of your connection. Are you willing to approach the Krovax again? Jack took a deep breath. Despite their peaceful encounter, the Krovax was still an apex predator with the power to kill him instantly. But understanding this connection might be crucial for humanities. Standing in the conclave, I'll do it, he said. The Vrexians set up monitoring equipment at a safe distance. Jack walked slowly into the clearing, moving toward where the Krovax lay watching. The massive creature rose to its feet as Jack approached, towering over him. Jack stopped a few meters away. Hey there, big guy, he said softly. Remember me? The Krovax tilted its head, those intelligent yellow eyes studying him. Then it made the rumbling sound Jack had heard in the cave, the non-aggressive greeting. Jack mimicked the sound as best he could. The effect was immediate. The Krovax stepped forward and lowered its massive head to Jack's level. Slowly, Jack raised his hand and placed it on the creature's armored snout. The scales were warm to the touch and surprisingly smooth. Remarkable, Zexira whispered from the observation point. It's treating him like a member of its own species. Jack stood there for several minutes, simply touching the Krovax. Then, following an impulse he couldn't explain, he stepped to the side and began walking toward the forest. The Krovax followed, immediately matching its pace to his. I'm going to explore a bit, Jack called to the watching Rexians. It seems willing to follow me. Be careful, the ambassador warned, and keep your emergency beacon ready. Jack nodded and continued walking. The Krovax stayed close beside him, occasionally nudging him with its snout when he went in a direction it didn't like. Jack realized the creature was guiding him. They walked for nearly an hour, deeper into the forest than Jack had ventured before. The trees here were enormous, with purple-tinged leaves that filtered the sunlight. Eventually, they reached a clearing where a small pool of water gleamed. The Krovax stopped and made a different sound, a series of clicks followed by a low growl. From the trees on the far side of the clearing, another Krovax emerged. This one was slightly smaller, but moved with the same powerful grace. Jack froze. One Krovax was manageable, but two? He reached slowly for his emergency beacon, but the second Krovax didn't approach aggressively. Instead, it made the same greeting rumble toward Jack's Krovax, which responded in kind. Then both massive predators turned their attention to Jack Dot to his amazement. The second Krovax approached cautiously and performed the same greeting ritual, pressing its snout briefly against Jack's outstretched hand. You're introducing me to your friend? Jack whispered to his Krovax companion. Back at the observation point, the Vrexians were in an uproar. Their tracking devices showed what was happening. A second Krovax, and it's not attacking, Zexira exclaimed. This defies everything we know about Krovax territorial behavior. Ambassador Vrexkar watched the data feed with growing amazement. They're accepting him into their social structure. This is unprecedented. Jack spent several hours with the two Krovax, observing how they interacted with each other and the environment. They seemed to communicate through a complex system of sounds, body postures, and scent markings. Occasionally, they would include Jack in these interactions, guiding him to water sources or areas with edible plants. By the time Jack returned to the monitoring station, the sun was setting. Both Krovax followed him to the edge of the clearing before retreating to the forest together. Inside, the Vrexian team waited with barely contained excitement. We've been monitoring your vital signs and the Krovax behaviors, Zexira said. The data is remarkable. They've accepted you into their social group. But Krovacs are solitary, Jack said, remembering what he'd been told. They only come together to mate. That's what we've always believed, the ambassador said. But perhaps our understanding is incomplete. Or perhaps your presence has triggered behaviors we've never observed before. Zexira was reviewing data on a large screen. There's more, she said. Look at these readings from when you were communicating with them. The screen showed two waveform patterns, one from the Krovacs vocalizations and another from Jack's body. Your brain was producing patterns that synchronized with their vocal frequencies, she explained. It's as if some part of your neurological structure is pre-tuned to their communication methods. Ambassador Vrexkar stepped forward. Dr. Harmon, I believe it's time we took this information to the Conclave. What you've discovered here goes beyond a simple survival test. It may change how we understand the connections between life forms across the galaxy. Jack looked out the window toward where the Krovacs had disappeared into the forest. Will they be safe? I don't want anyone hunting them or treating them as research subjects. The ambassador's expression softened, the first time Jack had seen such a look on a Vrexian face. They will be protected. You have my word. Then let's do it, Jack said. Let's tell the Conclave what we found. That night, as preparations were made for their return to the Conclave station, Jack received a message from Captain Warren on Earth. Jack, are you all right? We've been getting strange reports from the Conclave about you and some local wildlife. Jack smiled as he recorded his reply. I'm fine, Liz. Better than fine. I've made some new friends here. Very big, very toothy friends. And I think humanity just found its place in the galaxy. The Galactic Conclave chamber fell silent as Jack entered. Unlike his first appearance, he now walked beside Ambassador Vrexkar as an equal, not behind him as a supplicant. The various alien representatives whispered among themselves as they passed. News of the human survival on Vexus Prime had spread quickly, along with rumors of his unusual connection to the planet's apex predators. Jack wore a new uniform provided by the Vrexian's dark blue with silver trim that marked him as someone of importance. Around his neck hung a small device that Chief Scientist Zexira had created to help regulate his pheromone output in the recycled air of the space station. Are you ready? Ambassador Vrexkar asked as they approached the central platform. Jack nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. The chamber quieted as they took their positions. The High Counselor of the Conclave, a tall being with 4 arms and silvery skin, addressed them. Ambassador Vrexkar, you have called this special session to discuss the human trial on Vexus Prime. We understand the human survived the full lunar cycle? He did more than survive, High Counselor, Vrexkar replied. He has revealed something that may change our understanding of life in the galaxy. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The High Counselor gestured for Jack to step forward. Dr. Jack Harmon of Earth, the High Counselor said. The Conclave acknowledges your successful completion of the trial. By our traditions, Earth has earned membership status. But I am told there is more to your story. Jack took a deep breath and began to speak. He described his encounters with the Krovacs, how instead of killing him, the apex predator had recognized him as something familiar. He explained the discoveries made by the Vrexian scientists about the shared chemical signatures and possible ancient connections between worlds. We believe, Jack concluded, that many species across the galaxy may share more in common than we realized. The Krovacs recognize something in me that goes beyond our different evolutionary paths. Something encoded in our very cells that speaks of a shared heritage, despite developing on planets light years apart. Chief Scientist Zexira stepped forward, presenting the data they had collected. Holographic displays showed the molecular similarities between human and Krovacs biochemistry, along with recordings of Jack's interactions with the massive predators. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives from various worlds debated the implications. Some were skeptical, others fascinated. A few seemed alarmed at the idea that species from different planets might share ancient genetic connections. The High Counselor raised a hand for silence. This is indeed a significant discovery, if proven true. What do you propose, Ambassador Vrexkar? We suggest a joint research initiative, the ambassador replied. Humans and Vrexians working together to explore these connections further. And, he added, looking at Jack, we propose that Dr. Harmon lead this initiative as Earth's primary representative to the Conclave. More discussion followed. Jack noticed that many species that had previously dismissed humans as weak were now watching him with newfound interest or respect. The story of the human who befriended the most feared predators of Vexus Prime had clearly made an impression. Finally, the High Counselor called for a vote. One by one, the representatives indicated their positions. When the tally was complete, the result was clear. The proposal was approved by a large majority. It is decided, the High Counselor announced. Earth is welcomed as a full member of the Galactic Conclave. Furthermore, the Joint Research Initiative will proceed under the leadership of Dr. Harmon and Chief Scientist Zexira. As the formal session ended, representatives from various worlds approached Jack, eager to introduce themselves and discuss possible implications for their own species. Many who had once mocked the weak human now treated him with respect, bordering on reverence. Ambassador Vrexkar found Jack later, away from the crowds. You have accomplished something remarkable, the ambassador said. Not just for yourself, but for your entire species. I got lucky, Jack replied modestly. If that Krovax had been in a bad mood, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The ambassador made the grinding sound that Jack now recognized as Vrexian laughter. Perhaps. But you also showed wisdom and courage. You understood the predators. Mind in a way few non-Vrexians could, Jack smiled. Speaking of the Krovax, what will happen to them? The two you bonded with have been designated as protected specimens. The area around the monitoring station is now a research preserve. They will be studied but not disturbed. I'd like to visit them again, Jack said. Continue building our understanding. That can be arranged, Vrexkar promised. But first, there is something else you should see. The ambassador led Jack to a secure area of the station he hadn't visited before. Inside a large chamber, archaeologists and scientists from various species worked around a central artifact, an ancient stone pillar covered in symbols, unlike any writing system Jack had seen. This was discovered on Vexus Prime centuries ago, Vrexkar explained. Until now, we kept its existence limited to a few trusted species. It appears to be left by those we call the Ancient Ones. Jack approached the pillar, fascinated by the swirling symbols. Can you read it? Only parts. It speaks of a seeding of worlds, of connections across the stars that would one day be rediscovered. The ambassador pointed to a particular section. This part refers to kindred species that would recognize each other despite evolving on different worlds. Like humans and Krovax, Jack whispered. Exactly. Your discovery has given new meaning to these ancient words. It suggests the ancient ones had a plan, one that is only now beginning to unfold as species like yours reach the stars. Later that day, Jack spoke with Captain Warren via holographic communication, updating her on everything that had happened. So let me get this straight, Warren said, her image flickering slightly across the light years. You're now leading a major research initiative. Earth has full conclave membership, and the Vrexians actually respect you? Jack nodded. It's been a strange few weeks. And all because some giant lizard monster decided you smelled right? Warren shook her head, smiling. Only you, Jack. It's more than that, Jack explained. This could change everything we understand about life in the universe. If humans share ancient genetic markers with species from other worlds, it means we're all connected somehow. We're not alone, we never were. Warren's expression grew serious. What does this mean for Earth going forward? It means we have allies now, Jack said. Real allies, not just diplomatic connections. The Vrexians see us differently, not as weak creatures to be tolerated, but as distant relatives to be respected. Other species are following their lead, all because their scariest monster greeted you like a long-lost brother. Warren mused. Jack smiled at the phrase. Sometimes the strongest connections are the ones we never expected to find. 2 days later, Jack returned to Vexus Prime with a research team. As their shuttle landed near the monitoring station, Jack saw 2 familiar shapes waiting at the forest edge. The Krovax had returned. As if sensing his arrival, Ambassador Vrexkar watched as Jack approached the massive predators, who greeted him with their rumbling calls. In all our history, the ambassador said quietly to Zexira, we never imagined that the weakest species physically would forge the strongest connection with our world's most feared predators. Perhaps, the scientist replied, we have been measuring strength incorrectly all this time. As Jack stood between the 2 Krovax, their massive forms dwarfing his human frame yet treating him as one of their own, the truth of her words was undeniable. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, now stood at the center of a discovery that would reshape how all species viewed their place among the stars. The Krovax raised their heads and roared not in threat, but in celebration. And for the first time in recorded history, Vrexians found themselves cheering alongside creatures they had once feared, united by their connection to a single human who had shown them all a new definition of strength.